for coming. We're going to do a series of short videos on rule changes, and then there's a series of little quizzes, and we're going to run through those and try and answer them as a group. I think it's interesting because I took the quizzes and I passed one of them and I failed the other one. So the rules are, that's why we're doing this, because it's more complicated than that.
JD, we've sailed with you. We're not surprised you failed.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was good.
We were all thinking it, Roger.
One comment is there's been a lot of comments to me because I tend to be rather vocal. Sorry to the fleet. That, we're just out here having fun and the rules, whatever. Well, all of us are having fun. And some of us are sailing with rules that are the rules that we all agreed to in the sailing instructions. And others are sailing by rules that they sort of kind of think they know. And that doesn't actually work. So if we all had the same rules, I think we'd be all having more fun. So that's the concept. So with that, I'm going to try this.
Maybe he's looking at me.
I hope so.
Wow, that's
Welcome to another salesing.com rules discussion.
wow. Look at
Today
that.
we'll be explaining the changes to the racing rules of sailing that took effect in
That's
2021.
exciting.
This video is an
Working
update
great
to an
there.
earlier version that we developed in November of 2020. The update includes a few more changes that impact sailors. Many of the 2021 changes are minor and have little
Yeah, the
impact
connection
on
is
sailors during the race.
Since
For this
marijuana's legal, this
discussion, we
looks great.
skipped the mind-numbing details and we'll focus on the changes that affect sailing. We'll show the markers change and explain why it was made and discuss any potential impact on your sailing. If you want to dig into all the detailed changes, go to the World Sailing website for the study version of the rules changes. There's a link to that document in the description. The new rules took effect on January 1st, 2021. Here's a quick summary of the changes that could impact sailors. We'll explain more about these as we go through the rest of the discussion. The definitions of start and finish were changed to use the boat's hull to judge whether a boat is over the line. The terms crew and equipment were eliminated from the definition. A definition of sailing the course was added. The hidden impact of this change is that it allows the race committee to score a boat
You're
as
genius.
NSC did not
Yay,
sail
AV department.
without protesting that boat. The rules concerning exoneration were clarified and consolidated into one new rule, Rule 43. A solid blue flag denotes one end of the finish line, while the familiar orange flag denotes one end of the starting line. A V flag will be displayed when the race committee wants
Recording
to
in
instruct
progress.
sailors and support persons regarding search and rescue. If you seek redress for the actions of another boat, it can't be granted unless the other boat has taken a penalty or has been penalized for violations of Rule 2, fair sailing, or Rule 69, misconduct. This means you will likely have to protest that boat. Continuing with our quick summary, the notice of race, the NOR, becomes more important for two
Not sharing
reasons.
screen anymore.
First, the NOR may contain more information about the rules for the event. Also, the NOR information does not need to be repeated in the sailing instructions. This means you will want to read the NOR as carefully as you read the sailing instructions. The race committee or protest committee can use the notice board to announce their protest of a boat. This means you will want to make sure you check the notice board after racing. Or, if the board is electronic, make sure you have access to it.
Exit those.
Finally, support persons, and that includes coaches and parents, have new obligations and accountability.
We can have a true-
Support persons are now required to give aid to any boat needing assistance. Support persons are now prohibited from disposing trash on water, that's Rule 47,
That's good.
and a competitor can seek redress for the actions of another boat's support persons. In the rest of this video, we'll go over the changes in more detail. Here is the new definition of start. Additions are shown in red and deletions are shown with a strikeout
This
line.
might go off the side.
Take a few moments to read the definition. As you can see, the definition previously
Someone knows,
included the boat's
please,
crew and
come
equipment when determining if a boat is over the line.
Thank you.
These have been removed and only the boat's hull counts. This change was made because the race committee has struggled in some events to determine which boats are over if only a bowsprit or some other protruding equipment is over. This makes it easier for the race committee. The term hull is not defined in the rule. If there are challenges to the meaning of hull, they will probably be resolved by referring to another document, the Equipment Rules of Sailing. You can find a link to that document in the description. This change is also reflected in the definition of
Recording in
finish
progress.
and in Rules 29 and 30 regarding recalls and starting penalties. This change probably has little impact for most one-design sailors. The bowsprit and spinnaker protrude beyond the bow of a boat, but these are not normally in place when sailing the wind. The rules adopt a new definition, sail the course. Take a minute to read the definition. Do you recognize where this wording came from? The wording was taken from Rule 28, which was previously titled Sailing the Course. The definition now is used in Rule 28. This language was commonly referred to as the string rule. It states that you must go around all the marks and through the gates in the proper direction, so that a string following you encloses the course. If you make an error, for instance in rounding outside a gate mark, you have to back up and go through the gate in the right direction. This change was made to provide a consistent meaning for all the places in the rules that mention sailing the course. This change is also a potential trap for sailors. With the change, the rules also added a scoring abbreviation, NSC, for not sailing the course. Now the race committee can simply score a boat NSC if she doesn't sail the course properly. Previously, they would have needed to protest the boat for breaking a rule and hold a hearing. If the race committee adheres to this thought process, the only way a sailor may find out that he or she has been scored NSC
Yeah.
is to read the scores when they are posted. If you have been scored NSC in error, you can request redress. However, given the time limits on requesting redress, sailors will want to review the results as soon as they are posted. In Part 1, the fundamental rules, there are two changes that could have an on-water effect. Both changes are straightforward. Rule 1.1 was modified to clarify that support persons are required to help a person or vessel in danger. Note that support persons include coaches and parents or guardians of competitors. So parents of youth sailors are obligated to help any sailor or boat in trouble. Take a moment to review the most important rule in the racing rules, Rule 2. As you can see, this rule was modified to state that
Recording
a
in
penalty for
progress.
breach of fair sailing can now only be a disqualification that is not excludable as a throwout. The scoring abbreviation is DNE. This was done to limit the discretion of the race officials in assessing penalties for the rule. Now we come to Part 2 of the rules, when boats meet. There are several changes in this part. We'll take them one at a time. Rule 14, avoiding contact, was modified as shown. Take a moment to note the changes.
Yeah, see, this is important now, we're getting to
Recording
The
in
intent of
progress.
Rule 14 is to require all boats to avoid contact, including right-of-way boats and those entitled to mark room. However, the rule protects right-of-way boats and boats entitled to mark room by stating that they only need to avoid contact when it's clear the other boat is not cooperating.
We'll go back.
The first change in this rule is to clarify that in mark room situations, you are only protected by this rule if you are sailing within the mark room allowance. For example, in the situation shown, blue is taking more mark room than needed and can be penalized for not avoiding contact if yellow heads up. The second change is that the exoneration
So
portion
are
of
we
the rule
recording on the
was
phone?
moved to the new
Yeah.
exoneration rule, Rule 43, which we'll discuss shortly. Rule 16
So
regarding
let's just
changing
watch it
course
and
has
I'll
a
tell
minor
you.
change
Yeah.
with
Just set
little
up the phone
impact
so
for
we can
most
see the screen.
sailors. Take a moment to read the changes.
So I wanna go back for a minute.
Note
because
that Rule 16.1
what we
has
just
not changed
missed
and
was
is the fundamental
actually
rule
where
here.
we wanna get.
Right-of-way boats can't change course if the other boat does not have room to keep clear. Both changes are straightforward. Rule 1.1 was modified to clarify that support persons are required to help a person or vessel in danger.
Care.
Now we come to part 2 of the rules, when boats meet. There are several changes in this part. We'll take them one at a time. Rule 14, avoiding contact, was modified as shown. Take a moment to note the changes. The intent of Rule 14 is to require all boats to avoid contact, including right-of-way boats and those entitled to mark room. However, the rule protects right-of-way boats and boats entitled to mark room by stating that they only need to avoid contact when it's clear the other boat is not cooperating.
Can you pause it?
The first change in this
Yes.
rule is to clarify that in
Quite-
mark room
Quite
situations,
possibly.
So the question is, if a guy's barging, and I have right of way, and this boat's barging down on me, and I, hail.
Yeah.
You have no rights, you have no room, right? And that person then doesn't give way. Now, if I tap them, that's my question.
Well, that's what he was saying, is if you have to avoid him
It all,
un-
yeah,
except when it's not apparent that, he's going to
yeah,
give away. And so that's a judgment call. You can't anticipate somebody, and actually in the rules it says that you don't have to anticipate a situation until it happens. So like if you're on opposite tacks, someone tacks below you, you don't have to anticipate the new rights he has until he's established that position.
yeah.
Well, that means you can go along, but then at some point you have to determine, wait a minute, I'm gonna hit him, and so you have to avoid that collision. But if it's not apparent that he's going to have that right, then if you hit him, you're exonerated. You don't. It's okay to have a light tap,
Yeah.
if the situation arises that you couldn't have anticipated ahead of time that he wasn't going to give you, that your rights were going to get fouled. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because we've had this conversation before.
We've had it a number of times, and they've clarified the rule or changed it so that they're trying to explain, yes, you could have an actual collision, and if there's no damage, that depending on the situation. Now, there's a lot of times you just simply, the start's a great example, really, because you're sitting there, two boats are sitting together, and one of them keeps heading down. For instance, JD would head down on Bolt last year, and And
And Bolt was yelling.
Bolt was yelling and JD was ignoring. And Bolt avoided hitting JD in this situation, which is, of course, completely fictional.
Probably the wise thing that Bolt did. Huh?
And the wise thing, and
My fingers were in the bowl.
The idea here is that can Bolt anticipate that JD isn't staying within the rules? Well, you did. You anticipate, you avoided the collision, but you could protest me. And the thing that we don't do as a fleet very well is say, you followed me, do your circle. And I do really well at saying you followed me, and I make sure you know it all the way around the race course.
And everyone on the race course can hear it.
And everyone on the race course knows this. And the point is, if you follow someone, do your circle. Then nobody's upset. JD isn't so upset. And the only reason I get upset is because we aren't following rules.
So if a person said, okay, you're not, you're barging, I am going to tap your boat.
Yeah.
But you think it's better to say you have followed me, do your circles rather than touch the boat.
Well, that's what the rules would, if you can anticipate it, yes, that would be
You can avoid
right.
it, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. But he's saying that you can,
You can,
yeah.
and you know,
So it's kind of
I kind of come from the old school of sailing, don't I, Doug? Where where an actual collision happens, and when Charlie and I were sailing, and Doug was, I think we were doing that year, and Doug was trying to cross me, and I just hit him. Because that's how it used to be. Well, I guess the rules changed a little, and in fact, both of us would, in theory, been doing circles, because I shouldn't have hit him, and he didn't make it across.
Clear it, yeah.
So the point here is, in the old days, the way that you establish somebody fouled is you hit them.
Yeah.
Well, now you would bear off, and now it's the thing about racing sailboats. It's like golf. There is no referee, and we're our own referees. So it's up to each of us to be honest and say, yeah, I followed you, and I'll do my circle. And like golf, yeah, I got a 2. Really? What was the 6 shots out in the woods? And all of those don't count. Well, that's the idea. You can choose to sail by rules or not by rules, and by the fact that we joined the Minnetonka Yacht Club and we sail under the Minnetonka Yacht Club sailing instructions, I think like the second rule is that we follow the rules.
Obey all rules. Didn't Barney Fife say that?
Something like that. I think that's number 2 in the sailing rules, is that we follow the rules. So anyway,
JD.
Another one.
yeah,
At the leeward mark, when there isn't any wind.
Yeah.
Boats tend to be rocking back and forth.
Yeah.
And those of us who want to avoid collisions put our hand out and shove the other boat away so that we don't make contact, but we're making contact. How do we want to handle that at this club?
that's a great question, actually.
It happens.
But there's never a time that there's no wind on Minnetonka. So I think
Theoretical.
I think the question's void. No. I think that reaching out and trying to fend your boat off, there's no wind, you're not, I think that makes sense. You know, we don't wanna be scratching each other's boats up but that would be saying, yes, somebody fouled somebody.
That's
Well,
it.
it's kinda like if you grab the stays of the other boat and pull your boat forward.
Nothing wrong with that.
It's starting to become a little bit questionable. But, you know, when we do those around the island race that Blake used to do on Wednesday nights,
Yeah.
and you got an e-scow right there, I would grab a hold of those guys and just pull myself.
Well, yeah. Well, I told you about in Europe, right? I mean,
On the start.
at the start, is that word you're referring to?
So just about this question about putting your hand out,
Yeah.
you're putting by putting your hand out, you're anticipating that there's gonna be a collision, so how far can
Safety's
I
number
reach out?
one,
I can
though.
reach out a lot further
No,
than
no,
someone
no,
else
yeah.
can knock somebody away.
You're just trying to avoid the actual
Yeah, the boat's.
damage to a boat, the
Yeah.
grubbing of boats.
Yeah.
But
I
when
think
that
I think
happens-
we ought to agree as a fleet
yeah,
that whatever you do with your hand does not constitute contact. That's not contact. Contact's only when the two hulls come together.
right, yeah,
So if
I
you-
agree.
So, I mean,
But
it
if
is legally, it's contact, but let's just agree as a fleet, just push the guy off so that.
But
that makes sense.
are you saying that that isn't even a foul?
I would say that when you put your, if you can safely put your hand out, you're not going very fast, then we should just ignore the fact that the hand went out as a fleet.
Right, so, but is there did somebody foul somebody?
Yes, they fouled them according to these rules, but we can make our own
So-
rules about that.
So if anybody gains advantage, then there's a problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
if you
You're
push
gonna
someone
grab
back.
a boat and push somebody
no,
off.
I
Right,
think,
and
If you
I
push somebody
think
to win
if
or
you are,
something, you're gonna be
I think
getting
if you're
advantage.
trying to avoid a collision and you put your hand out, somebody fouled someone.
Yeah.
That is the rules. And so somebody needs to do a circle, whoever was the one that was at fault. I think that's pretty clear how the rules work. And if we wanna, I don't even know how you'd change the rules to say, okay, well, we don't use the rules.
Well, in this fleet, we have traditionally ignored the rules when they don't make any sense. And I think it doesn't make any, you're right, Bolt, if somebody gets an advantage, pulls themselves ahead, they're an asshole. But,
Well, thank you for that.
but other than that, I think it's okay. We ought to just agree that, you know, we
So
do
we're
ignore-
agreeing Bolt's an asshole.
JD, some of the more egregious ones I've seen have not been between Ynglings and Yinglings, it's between Yinglings and other fleets.
East Coast. Thank you. Oh, I didn't say East, I didn't do that.
Bolt and I had a huge altercation with, what was it, was it M15 or X, what is it, the newer fleet? that-
Yeah.
M15, on the Burton Cup. You know, we were heading for the mark and they came in on,
Oh, yeah.
we were on, yeah, they came in on port and just completely, it's like we don't even exist.
Well, you know, we had a significant altercation with E-boats a couple of years ago. And I spoke to, the E-boaters and I spoke to the race committee and I actually spoke to somebody on the board. And the comment I got back was protest the E-boat. That they followed you. And if you protest the E-boat, next time they're not gonna do that because they're in a race too. And if they get thrown out of the race because they picked on us because we're slow, then they're not gonna do it next time. And that, you know, so the question there is, okay, do we wanna just get beat up by the faster boats or do we want to have fair sailing within our races. And the purpose of rules is that it's fair, that it sets a fair base.
So here's a question in that regard. We say do your turns to our fleet.
Yeah.
Do they have that kind of mentality as well, or do we post a red protest flag, sail across the finish line, and inform the race committee that we are protesting E number 72?
Well, you can say, do your turn. You're supposed to do the turn as soon as you can, as soon as you clear whatever area. So you'll see if they did it. Put up your flag.
So,
Protest.
But you have to,
what,
you have to hail them with
Yeah.
penalty,
Yeah, right.
and you have to put your flag up. That sets the penalty in
Right.
motion.
If they don't do the same.
Now, the problem, here's the whole problem with protesting, is you then have to, in 30 minutes, fill out a protest form, file it, and go to a protest hearing. And it's like,
Who wants?
is it really worth that?
and that's only if they don't do their turn.
Right.
Okay, and one of the things that I kind of noticed is that when, that fleets seem to think that they, as long as they don't hurt someone else in their own fleet, that it really doesn't count.
Right.
You know, because,
But there's so many times in a season, I hear about so-and-so, you know, did this at the finish and it cost me 2 boats. Or they did this at the leeward mark and it cost me 3 boats. And because we're not very fast and we, you know, if you upset our momentum or you push us out, now we lose a lot more than an E-boat does. And, you know, so these E-boats or whoever, they come in and so we'll get to where, how do you establish, like at the leeward mark, the room, and the E-boats come in, they're so much faster. We're in the 2-boat length circle, and we're bobbing along, and they come in, and they think they can just scream in there and out. Well, the rules say they have to go around us if they hadn't established the overlap at the 2-boat lengths when we enter the 2-boat lengths. So when we enter, you know, it depends on our transom, but they, you know, that's when it gets established. So
Well, you're saying 2 boat lengths, I think
Or
it's
three.
3.
Yeah.
Like, let's not confuse that.
7, okay, the 7-boat length. Right, yeah, I'm sorry,
Three and one.
I'm on the old 1902 rules.
Well, let's,
Back when I
let's go
started.
ahead with.
Okay.
I interrupted you. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
you sure as hell did. Get out of here.
For example, in the situation shown, blue is taking more mark room than needed and can be penalized for not avoiding contact if
Did we
yellow
get-
heads up. The second change is that the one at a time. Rule 14, avoiding contact, was modified as shown. Take a moment to note the changes. The intent of Rule 14 is to require all boats to avoid contact, including right-of-way boats and those entitled to mark room. However, the rule protects right-of-way boats and boats entitled to mark room by stating that they only need to avoid contact when it's clear the other boat is not cooperating. The first change in this rule is to clarify that in mark room situations, you are only protected by this rule if you are sailing within the mark room allowed. For example, in the situation shown, blue is taking more mark room than needed and can be penalized for not avoiding contact if yellow heads up. The second change is that the exoneration portion of the rule was moved to the new exoneration rule, Rule 43, which we'll discuss shortly. Rule 16 regarding changing course has a minor change with little impact for most sailors. Take a moment to read the changes. Note that Rule 16.1 is not changed and is the fundamental rule here. Right-of-way boats can't change course if the other boat does not have room to keep clear. The wording in 16.2 was revised to specifically address bearing off past 90 degrees to the true wind to hunt a boat on a beat to windward. This is a common tactic in team racing. The rule now applies when the port deck boat is sailing to pass to leeward of the starboard boat. Thus, the starboard boat can no longer turn this rule off by bearing off below 90 degrees to the true wind. Rule 18.1, concerning when mark room applies, was changed to remove a loophole in Rule 18. The change was to add a sentence stating that Rule 18 no longer applies when mark room has been given. A similar sentence was removed from Rule 18.2 Delta. Let's pull this apart with a situation from the study version. In the situation shown, the gray boat was not overlapped with the white boat at the zone, and so was not entitled to room at the mark in accordance with Rule 18.2 Bravo. However, in the previous version of the rules, Rule 18.2 Bravo turns off after the white boat has been given room. In the previous version of the rules, once Rule 18.2 Bravo turned off, Rule 18.2 Alpha would still apply and would grant mark room to the inside overlapped boat. So, at position 4, Rule 18.2 Alpha would have granted mark room to gray. This was not the intent envisioned by the rules. To fix this, World Sailing added text to 18.1 to turn off the entire rule once the boat entitled to mark room passes the mark. This rule gets changed frequently, and I'm sure we'll continue to see changes. A new rule, Rule 20.4, was added to Rule 20, room to tack at an obstruction. Take a moment to read the rule. As you can see, this rule puts the onus on the hailing boat to ensure the hail is received. This helps prevent confusion when it may be hard to hear, such as in a noisy environment or in larger boats where the boats may be further apart. In the International Code Flag system, Code Flag V, Victor, signifies a request for assistance. World Sailing added this flag to the race signals page and added Rule 37 to require all boats to monitor the race committee channel for search and rescue instructions. The race committee will also hail boats to turn to this channel. Rule 43 is a new rule which consolidates the rules related to exoneration. Take a look at the rule. Do you remember the 3 rules that these statements were drawn from? Part A of the new rule comes from Rule 64.1 Alpha. The wording is comprehensive. If you are compelled to break a rule because another boat broke a rule, you are exonerated. The remaining 2 parts add further guidance. Part B comes from Rule 21, which is the old rule regarding exoneration. Rule 21 has been deleted. This part is specific to situations in which room or mark room are required. This part exonerates you from the right-of-way rules, rules about keeping clear, and touching a mark. Part C comes from Rule 14B and protects right-of-way boats or boats entitled to room if contact occurs, but only if the contact does not cause damage or injury. Be sure to note that if any damage or injury occurs, no matter how slight, the right-of-way boat will be penalized if it is shown that it was possible to have avoided contact. Rule 43 also changes the wording from shall be exonerated to is exonerated. This makes it clear that exonerated boats do not need to wait for a hearing and do not need to take penalties on the water. Appendix J regarding the notice of race and sailing instructions is also changed. We'll summarize the changes here rather than show the markups. The change removes all requirements that a rule included in the notice of race, the NOR, be repeated in the sailing instructions. The change also requires the NOR to contain rules a reasonable competitor would want to know when deciding whether to enter an event or when preparing for the event in the weeks before it. This significantly increases the importance of the NOR, and you should be sure to read it as carefully as you read the sailing instructions. Rule 25.1 also requires that the NOR be made available to each boat before she enters an event. Finally, 2 flags were added to the race signals page in addition to the V flag we discussed previously. These flags had been in use but not recognized in the racing rules of sailing. The orange flag is the starting line flag we are all familiar with. The blue flag is now designated as the finish line flag. It's not certain that all race committees will adopt the blue flag as the finishing line flag. The SIs will state which flags will be used. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave a comment. If you like our videos, please subscribe. Also, visit our website at sales.
We're gonna go just, they have a couple of quizzes, and I think those might be better for us. If I can figure out where I put them. We can go to my Charles Schwab account and see how that's going. That might not be quite as interesting.
So while we're waiting, at the proper, it used to say that a boat should sail its proper course in rounding the mark, right? The proper course for Ynglings, or most of us, is to come into the mark wide, to swing to the left so that we are as close to windward as possible when we pass the mark. However, one can come in close to the mark on port and swing the boat around radically and make as tight a rounding as possible. Are we allowed, do you think, to use our normal rounding technique, or do we have to, if there are other boats there, round as closely as possible, even though it will slow us down?
I've changed. You're bringing back. old
Well, I
ones.
think, Charlie, you can and that'd be good. That's a good
So,
one.
I am the old school guy, like JD. In the old days, you used to be able to do that. Take a tactical rounding, which is what they call it,
Yeah,
and they've changed the rules so you have to do a seaman-like rounding, which is not the fastest, but is closest to the buoy. So,
yeah, okay, that's the new interpretation.
Right, so Christine helped me to understand that.
Explain that some more, Charlie, I'm not sure I get it.
How Christine taught me?
No, I understand.
Yeah, tell us how that
I
works.
definitely understand how that works.
Okay.
But explain a seaman rounding versus a tactical rounding.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Here's our buoy.
Devices.
Here's our buoy. The wind's coming from bolt, and this is me, and this is Christine. In the old days, you used to do just like Fred talked about. You come out wide, and you come in tight, and you go like that. And the rules now state that you have to sail. What did I say it was?
Seaman-like.
Seaman-like path as opposed to a tactical. So a tactical is where if you're alone, you do this and you have a great rounding. And if JD is right behind me, sometimes, once in a while, I come up and I stuff it as high as I can so that he doesn't stick his nose up in there. But he does anyway, and then he goes by me. But we're not in a buoy room situation. In a buoy room situation, you have to stay. You can't do it out wide and in tight because you have impacted this boat. So
Because you're pushing them too wide. Huh?
right, yeah. So that's Christine has convinced me, and carefully reading the rules, that, yeah, I gotta stay close all the way around, and so that's what I do now.
So that impedes your speed, then where if you go wide and then come in tight, you still got better speed, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, that was fun to learn that, wasn't it?
That was years ago, though.
That was years ago, we've gotten over it. That's when Charlie and I sailed together, we had fun doing that with Christy.
She explained it to you.
When she explained everything to us.
Makes sense.
You can't just push somebody out.
Okay, I think I found it. Yeah, see, there, I got that right.
Hey, you got one, right?
I got one right.
I think we ought to
Common
talk
breaches in the
about
fin
barging
funds.
at the start, cause that's the biggest problem.
That's
Yeah.
what
in the
we're
fleet.
gonna talk about, some things, if I could ever frickin' find it. You keep talking among yourselves. Oh, topic is sailing.
Well, Cindy and I, on the starts, we're always together at the start. And sometimes I let her in at the committee boat and sometimes I don't. And I was thinking about this. And I'm going, well, she's gonna become neurotic, because sometimes I let her in.
Become, what become? We're there.
So, yeah, and Fred is right. Sometimes,
There it is.
sorry, can I use your stuff?
I think so.
So,
There
wind's
is-
still coming from Bolt.
Here, use this, you can use
Alright,
that.
okay. Wind's coming from Bolt. Here's the committee boat, here's the buoy. And Cindy and I are doing the dance. This is Cindy, because she can't see. And Cindy and I are doing the dance up here. And, at 20 seconds, Cindy starts screaming in here. And about half the time, I let her go by because she's going so fast that she'll be down here by the time the gun goes off and it's clear. Other times, she comes in there and I say, "No room, Cindy,"
Uh-huh.
and she does this. So I realize that I'm probably, if I were more consistent when we're doing that, you would at least be able to anticipate, even though you don't have to anticipate, what I'm gonna do. So is that a fair assessment of how we do our dance?
Yeah.
And about some of the times I let you go by,
Mhm.
and other times I say, "No way, not gonna make it." So,
Well, it depends on how fast you're going and how close you are to the line too.
right, and
Then how much time?
So you're making an assessment, you're not just being different day, different Charlie, you know? I think you're making an assessment of the situation.
let's hope so.
Yeah, I
Let's
mean,
hope there's some
I'm
consistency.
gonna assume that you're being logical, okay?
Let me do another
Sure.
scenario here.
Okay.
There's not too much wind. There's not too much wind, and the boats are coming up like this. And this guy is clearly behind,
Mhm.
okay? And, this guy gets up here, he's pretty close, but he's drifting down the line, as we do, when
Okay,
we're not
yeah.
going very fast. Now there's room for this guy to get in, but this fellow decides the gun's gone off. He now has bluffing rights. So he decides, I'm gonna shut the door on him. As far as before the start, after the start, you have to sail your proper course. That's, yeah. But if you get out here, you have luffing rights. Now, where between not having luffing rights, sailing your proper course, and here, where you do have luffing rights, where does that change off?
Well, the differentiation is before the gun goes, right?
No, but after the gun goes off,
After the gun, but before the gun,
before the gun, you can do whatever you want.
okay.
There's
Okay,
no proper course, cause
no
they're,
proper course.
you're
After the
not
gun,
on
you
race
have to
course.
do your proper course.
Yep, I'm just clarifying because.
So-
You may not be over the starting line, but
the
it's
gun's
after
out,
the
yeah.
gun.
Okay.
so I don't understand where your luffing rights came from then.
Well, you
After
can luff
the
it
start.
out here on the course, somewhere on the course.
You know, you have to sail your proper course.
You don't have a right to luff boats anymore?
You
When they're
can't
going
just
by to
go
windward?
head to wind, no.
Well, you can go head to wind on the
Right.
course.
Yeah, you can.
Why would you?
Yeah.
Why would you?
If you have luffing rights.
Yeah,
Why would you?
Well,
Is
We
there-
could keep a guy from going by you to windward who's faster than you are, for instance.
Maybe
they'd have to be
maybe it's a
sailing lower
series and you
to do
need to beat that boat to win the series.
Okay, whatever it is, you have
Well,
roughing rights.
let's go through these, and of some of these questions will be answered.
Okay.
Some of them won't.
Thanks, Charlie.
So
Anyway,
can
that's
everyone read that?
No, you'll have to read it.
I never understood that.
The first question. I will strive to be a fair sailor by observing the rules and probably taking a penalty when I follow the rules. So the choices are that you agree or you disagree. I mean, this is, the first rule of sailing.
So basically, if somebody thinks you followed them, and you don't think you did, the question is, do you still take your turn?
No, the question is, are you agreeing to sail by the rules of sailing or not?
Yeah.
Is it, do we agree that that's what we're doing?
I agree.
Yeah. And that is the correct answer, actually, oddly enough.
Except when it's inconvenient.
Hey,
Okay,
here's a newbie rule.
Yeah.
Okay, so inadvertently, of course, found somebody. Does it make a difference in which direction to take the turn?
no, you have to do a full,
You just have to do a full
a
turn.
jibe and a
But it doesn't
tab.
matter which
You
direction.
can do it any direction you want.
Okay.
One, I'm not gonna tell you which one is
Well, in the
faster.
southern hemisphere, you need to do it this way.
There.
Yeah, that's right. So, but in that we're sailing in the northern,
Yes, whichever one the Coriolis effect.
but there is one that's faster than the other. You can contemplate that.
Okay. Deal.
Okay, so here we have a little scenario that, it's showing the blue, can we see that?
No.
Can't see a damn thing, can you? Okay, good. In this scenario, it's showing two boats, the blue boat's going along, the yellow boat comes from behind and they hit the blue boat. So the question is,
But the other key point is they're sailing downwind.
they're sailing downwind. And the question becomes, who is at fault?
Yellow.
Yellow.
Following boat.
Yeah,
Even if they're sailing upwind, they'd still be at fault.
right. You just can't
If you hit the
plow
stern,
into
you're
someone,
The overtaking boat.
especially the overtaking boat. But you can't just plow into someone anyway. It's like, excuse me, you're in my way.
That's the East Cows.
That is-
You can be penalized if you do not avoid contact with another boat, even if you have right of way. True or false?
True.
It's true, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, true. You're sailing around the world. No, you're not. That's not what it says. So stop that. No, see? Damn, mouse is awfully fast on this screen here. You are sailing around the windward mark and your boom touches the mark. No other boat is around you. What do?
Carry on.
Nothing. If you don't gain advantage, you can continue going.
Do you promptly clear the other boats and complete one penalty
You
turn?
touch the mark.
Yep.
Do you complete one penalty turn
If nobody sees it, then the tree
prior
follows.
to the finish of the start, or do you keep sailing unless no one hails protest?
I think it's the first one.
It's the first one. You go out, get away from any boats that might be coming. You do your circle and go. You don't just do your circle right there, even though no one's there, because they might be there by the time you're done, and then you're in their way.
So you don't have to go around the mark again.
No, you don't. They don't do that anymore. You just do a circle. Now, this one we're seeing blue and yellow are sailing towards the leeward mark, After reaching the zone, yellow establishes an overlap. Blue does not give yellow room at the mark. Yellow keeps clear of blue, but protests.
Correct.
Looks like yellow didn't go around the mark.
Yeah,
Which boat should promptly take the penalty?
Blue.
yellow. Cause they weren't overlapped.
They weren't overlapped entering the
No,
zone.
blue and yellow,
They were not overlapped entering the
Stop.
zone.
Okay.
It seems like they were.
So,
blue and
Were they
yellow are
overlapped or
sailing towards the leeward mark.
Yeah.
After reaching the zone, yellow establishes the overlap.
After.
After.
The keyword is after, okay.
Right, so the drawing shows the first boat hits the circle and the straight off
Yeah.
the transom, the other boat is still behind, so there's no overlap established. So then they come in and blue, yellow tries to,
Margin.
blue doesn't allow yellow
Yeah.
around the mark.
Yeah, so yellow followed blue, because they didn't have overlap.
Well, no, they fouled, they missed the mark.
They didn't follow, they just.
They
Yeah,
missed
they missed the mark,
So
yeah.
technically, they lost it.
So there's-
Yeah, well, but they missed the mark, their yellow
Okay,
has.
so I answered yellow when I did
No, but
this,
there's no penalty.
and it was incorrect.
Wait, so
The actually, nobody followed anyone
Okay.
because yellow bailed out.
right, but yellow still has to go and go back and do the.
Well,
mark.
sure, he has to go around the mark still,
Yeah, okay.
but he doesn't have to do a penalty turn because there wasn't a penalty. Nobody, there was no foul.
Didn't break the
Yellow,
rule.
yellow kept clear of blue as it.
That was a trick question.
It was a trick question. Good job on that.
He didn't break
But,
the rule,
you
he
know-
was just stupid.
when Christine comes in,
Yeah.
and some other people, to the Lord Mark, and they come in, at a much more of a close reach than full downwind. You know, the line from their stern, allows a lot of time for another boat to get
Get
inside of
away.
them,
Yeah.
but they don't seem to understand that.
Well, and they would if they were protested.
Okay?
That's where it gets settled, is in a
Because,
protest
you
hearing.
know, you can imagine the other boat can come in quite a bit later than Christine's bow goes over. the
Well, yes,
three
and,
boat,
and
and
so,
still, guys have got plenty of time to get
does
in.
everyone understand this
Yeah,
discussion?
to be explained to these guys that the line is taken off at 90 degrees off the transom.
Straight off your transom,
Right,
so
that's where
as
that-
you're sailing along, and Fred's example is, we're coming into the mark, and
Bolts the wind.
Bolt is still no he isn't, I'm the wind, we're going downwind.
So you come up
I
here.
can't do that, that's difficult. Why do you make it so
The wind
hard?
keeps
We didn't,
changing.
we don't want the wind to shift.
The wind shifts.
I'm the damn wind!
Underneath the wind shift on the course.
So, here you go, this is.
So the wind is coming from the TV now?
Yeah. Well, actually from me, but, you know, whatever. I'm a bag of air.
You're right.
No comment.
Cindy. So here I am, I hit the 2 or 3 boat length circle, right?
2 or 3.
And this boat is out well outside. But straight off the transom, whoop. Little tighter, right?
I mean, aren't you
Straight
kind of-
off the transom,
Yeah.
this boat is within an overlap when this boat hits the circle.
Okay.
This boat now has room if they can get it.
Mhm.
So this boat has to allow this guy in. And that's the scenario Fred's talking about. Now, in theory, this boat's going straight downwind and this one's reaching. It really shouldn't be an issue. This guy should be a lot faster to get around. But if that doesn't work that way, and you get down here, that you gotta give room to let that guy through. That's what Fred's talking about, right?
It's
A common e-boat scenario that they've tried several times on me.
Yeah,
I'm this boat.
yeah, you are.
They're coming in. They say, I'm about to approach 3 boat lengths. They turn their thing down.
Yeah.
They say no overlap, and then they go back up.
Ah.
And they've done that to me several times.
That's perfectly legal.
It is legal, but how do they know exactly where the 3 boat length is? And do you want to get in a pissing match argument with them?
They
That's
don't.
always the question though, in the water, where's the 3 boat length?
Don't you see
And
the
which
line?
3 boat lengths, is
Yeah, which
28
boat?
feet, or
Yeah,
is the
is
3
it-
boat
Is
lengths
it,
of
is it the
21 feet?
28-foot boat or the 20-foot boat?
It's
No,
the first
Yeah,
boat
right.
in.
Longer boat in this
It's the
scenario.
first
It's the
boat in.
first boat to touch.
First boat,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if we're plopping along and we're slow, and we're
And you're going, I want room, I want
So
room.
that's like 84 feet out.
Yeah.
So
If it's an but they're
that's over 4 of us.
so anyway. That's just that when they do the waggle and say I've turned my stern so that it's not a problem.
Well, and that's tactically smart.
It's shitty.
Why would you do that if you're an Eagle? Why?
Because you're an e-boat. No,
Well, it'd be so, yeah, like you're saying, he'd be so fast, it just gets.
But if you're two Yinglings and you're about to do that and you're gonna try and keep that guy from getting room, that's a tactical move you can make.
Yeah.
but still shitty.
Well, it's okay if you can get away with it. Okay, kids. So in this here scenario,
It's hard to win it.
where are we? Blue and yellow are approaching the leeward mark. Yellow does not give blue room around the mark. Blue keeps clear of yellow.
Yeah.
So, who is at fault here? Blue and yellow are approaching the mark.
Well, this is what
Yellow
we're talking
doesn't
about.
give blue room to round the mark.
What's
Now look at, that's exactly the scenario we just talked about.
Yeah.
Depends on if blues
The,
overlap.
the,
with one
the
yellow.
transom's wide open,
Yeah.
and when yellow hit the mark, the blue was inside, but yellow didn't give him the room.
So, yellow.
Yellow is at fault,
Yeah.
right?
But if yellow had made that wigwag, kept blue out.
Well, no, that blue is within.
It is here, but if it
You'd
turned
have to make a
stern-
big wag to pull that off, but yeah, you could, theoretically, that would work. Alright, so in this one, we have red and green because they're different boats, obviously, the blue and yellow. Red and green are sailing upwind. Red asks permission to cross. Green says cross. Green then ducks red. A third boat, not even in this scenario, not involved in the situation, protests red for not keeping clear of green. Who's at fault?
Well, no one protested.
The boat protesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is
Mind your
no
own business.
penalty. There is no penalty, to keep clear, and the other guy's just a jerk, an asshole, and probably should get kicked out of the fleet.
No, you should have to buy the ice cream.
Well,
No,
the
I'd
boat
kick
the
him
boat
out.
coming up there is gonna yell because he's gonna get blanketed. The boat that ducked will probably turn and then blankets the boat behind us. He's protesting, saying, "You're gonna be able to take me out."
Oh, well,
Yeah, that's no well.
shoulda not been there, I guess. Blue and yellow are sailing towards the windward mark. Blue tacks to starboard inside the zone. Yellow was sailing close haul to the mark, but heads up to avoid blue.
That's what.
Which boat should promptly take a penalty?
Blue. If there's an overlap.
Why is there a penalty?
Oh, blue is
Blue's
over.
inside though.
Yeah, it depends on where
Inside
blue
mark.
enters.
No, he tacked back on the starboard. He cleared his tack.
The answer is blue takes a penalty.
Why?
Because he doesn't have rights tacking inside the zone. So that's a scenario we've talked about in our informal discussions of something that happened on the course. And what we're talking about here is the starboard boat, he hits the circle. Well, obviously his transom's wide open to the port boat.
Yeah.
And so the scenario that's been talked about is, well, then the port boat has rights at the mark because he established an overlap. And that's not true if he tacks inside the zone. So if he tacks outside the zone, if this is all way out here, then that's a whole different scenario. You're just port starboard,
Yeah.
and you tack, you get on your proper course. You've now established your rights, and yellow then would have to avoid that boat if they overtook.
Blue just has to be able to complete his task.
The blue has to get a complete tack established. The wind needs to fill the sail, and they need to establish that tack. It used to be you just go past, head to wind.
Let's see what they say for what their wording is.
No. That's too many words for me to read, kids.
I can't read it.
Alright.
Should take a.
Blue should take a penalty since he broke Rule 18.3, which states in part that if a boat in the zone of a mark is left to the port somebody else can read that would be great. Some of us with dyslexia have difficult time putting that many words together.
So blue should take a penalty since she broke Rule 18.3, which states in part that if a boat in the zone of a mark to be left to port passes head to wind from port to starboard tack, and then is fetching the mark, she shall not cause a boat that has been on starboard tack since entering the zone to sail above the close hull to avoid contact.
Good, that didn't make sense even when you read it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Keep reading it.
And she shall thereafter give mark room if that boat becomes overlapped inside her. This would be true if yellow had to luff up to make the mark in absence of blue. So that last phrase is interesting.
So maybe blue would then have to sail down and not clear the mark to get out of yellow's way. Because blue cannot
Have
then
to go
push
back
yellow up. So, yeah,
Blue should duck yellow.
yeah, right. And then blue's gonna have to come around to.
Yeah,
clear that
the
mark.
point is blue didn't have rights.
Yeah, right.
And that if they foul at all, if yellow has to do anything, then blue's at fault. You just, by coming in and tacking in the boat, the circle,
Yep.
you don't have rights.
So this happens most often when there's a parade.
This happens all the time.
Especially the flag.
Yeah.
It actually does
Somebody's
happen
coming
all
from
the
port
time.
tack and just
You know,
crashes
so,
through.
those creeps that go shoot the corner and come in screaming in, and they piss you off because they're ahead of you, and then they tack on your face.
Right, it's usually not a yellow, it's 3 yellows in a row.
Right.
Yeah, right. So, and Charlie and I used to sail in the Sea Fleet when there were 100 boats at the inlet, and the parade would be 40 boats.
Oh, yeah.
And you'd have to just duck and duck and duck. It's like, you just absolutely would not come in on port. It was just prohibited, because rarely was there an opening and boy did we get burn times, you know, it's just like, so, yeah. Some of these rules are really significant in big fleets. Alright, what do we got here? Blue and yellow are sailing downwind by the lee, with the wind coming over the same side of the boat that the sail is on. The boats collide with no damage. Both boats protest, each claiming the other violated Rule 10. Which boat should promptly take a penalty? So you've got blue is on starboard, yellow's on port. Well, the claim is, yeah, the wind, because of their angle, it's coming over, you know, the whatever.
By the lee.
The question is who should take a penalty?
I was on starboard or port.
The blue is on starboard,
Right.
blue's on starboard, yellow's on port.
Blue, that's right away.
Yeah.
Right. So yellow followed. It's pretty much that simple. Question 10,
We were on the same time.
4 boats are approaching the starting line. Before the start, blue overtakes yellow and contacts or transom.